guys, I'm Dr. Matt Geller. I'm the co-founder and CEO at CovalentCareers. To my left, I've got the lovely Patricia Fulmer, Dr. Patricia Fulmer. She practices in Huntsville, Alabama, and also works on the CovalentCareers team. And to her left, Cameron Faylor is our Director of Eyecare Talent Recquisition at CovalentCareers, an amazing individual with a wealth of knowledge on the topic we're talking about today. If you would like to ask questions live, you can visit that URL, slido.com, and enter VEE 2018, or you could just ask us right here. The topic of resume building, I think, is an important one, and no matter what, LinkedIn profile, whatever fancy schmancy thing you got, you still have to have a paper resume at the end of the day. That's just where the industry of the world is at. You know, it's an important element. So, you know, when thinking about, let's start with your resume. Actually, let's go. You know, what elements, and when you were thinking about your resume, were important for you, to land the opportunities you wanted as an OD?
When you're doing a resume, you really don't want to short sell yourself. Things that you maybe don't think are that important, maybe to the person that you're actually sending that resume to. So I typically start building my resume and put everything that I could possibly think of that has to do with eye care, has to do with school, how I did, anything that I did outside of the box in school that related to that, put it all down, right? And then I'll start to go through and edit that and maybe take out if I feel like it's a little too lengthy for what I'm applying for, and we'll get a little more into resumes versus CVs later and some of the length stuff with that. But go through and start filtering out from that point. Don't think just because, I've got it on 2 pages that I've got to stop now. If you did 2 pages of work, put it down. Your employer may be looking for that one thing that you thought, it's too long, I'm not going to put it on there. Go ahead and do that. So for me, it was making sure that I really encompassed everything that I had done.
So Cameron, you've seen lots of optometry doctor resumes before. What are some of the things that you look for that are like, this is a money resume, this thing is good?
The big thing is to make sure that you tailor your resume for the position that you're applying for. So you have optometrists that just have a general resume, and like you said, it literally has everything they've ever done on it, including their subway job in high school. It's just one of those things where you really need to kind of tailor it more towards the position that you're looking for. So if you are a doctor looking for a retail optometry position, then you tailor it towards retail optometry. If you're looking for something that's going to be in, more disease-related, then you go for more disease-related. If you're looking for something educational, you focus it more towards the educational. So it's really important to make sure that you focus your resume on specific things, and that way, once you know the job that you're looking for, you're able to tailor it in a way that a recruiter like myself or a hiring manager, which is the next step after that, is going to be able to look at your resume and say, this is somebody that we're interested in based on these certain factors.
One thing I'd add to that, I think you touched on a really good point, that you have to filter it to that specific position, but a lot of times when your student's coming out, maybe you don't have a lot of that experience yet, right? So in those cases, in my opinion, go ahead and put everything in school that you've done that's relevant to optometry, relevant to being involved, to being a leader, to being whatever it is that you're wanting to convey about yourself for that position. And then, as you said, as you grow, you can start to whittle that down. When I first got out of school, I had some things that went back a little further than what my resume right now has, because I've built up other professional accomplishments, done other things, so I don't necessarily need those sort of, meat to my resume anymore, because I've got other things that maybe trump that a little bit. But as you said, don't put, I worked at 7-Eleven for 4 years, because that probably isn't going to necessarily, unless somehow that plays into eye care for you, it's probably not going to help you with your next job.
Shows longevity.
It does. There you
go.
go. There's always a spin, right?
So, when thinking about taking a step back really quick, when applying for a job, what are the essential elements there? Is it cover letter, resume? Is there anything else that's needed?
Cover letter and resume are the biggest things. And even cover letter is sometimes not even needed as well. That goes back to, again, what kind of position are you really applying for? If you're applying for a position with that's more of like a staff optometrist opportunity, you typically don't need a cover letter. You need a standard resume with all of your contact information, your skills, experience, education, and references optional at the very end. And that's even something that you could really kind of do away with.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's perfectly fine to say references upon request or
Available upon
something
request.
of
Yep.
that nature, because a lot of times, especially with the laws and regulations and kind of business etiquette that there is now, a lot of references don't get you that far anymore. It's basically, did they work there? Yes or no. Are they rehireable? Yes or no. And rehireable doesn't mean would you hire them. That means did they do anything to break your actual code for what can be rehired. So we've used to have staff all the time that would leave us, and I wouldn't rehire them for whatever reason it was, whether it was a leadership or a behavior issue. But technically, per the company rules, they were rehireable. So references don't necessarily get you all that much, but it's always good to have it on there. And I think cover letter wise, like you said, if you're questioning should I or should I not for this position, always better to do one and not need it than not do one and then kind of expect it. It's kind of that same montage. You'd rather show up overdressed than underdressed. Kind of the same thing with your cover letter.
I agree 100%.
So one other thing you can do when you've really found a certain position that, say like it's come down to the last position that you're thinking about applying for, you've had some conversations with the hiring manager, the senior doctor. You can go one step further. I did this when applying for my first position. I assembled somewhat of like a hybrid business plan. It was my analysis of how that practice was doing from an external view, but also what I thought I could bring to the practice. So I very just high-level outlined the value that I could bring, the modalities of care that I could bring, how I would do it, any staff training that needed to be involved, any costs that will be required, for example, purchasing equipment, and then presented that in kind of like a 5-page, 6-page document, which really separated me from the competition. I've given that advice so many times. I wonder how many people have really taken the advice, and I think people don't take the advice because they feel, why are my ideas valuable? This doc's been in practice for 25 years. What do I know? But you know a lot. You know a lot more that they don't know, specifically maybe around the way new generation reacts to marketing or advertising. So you have that knowledge that they don't have, and don't be afraid to show that. Don't be afraid to put together a document that has those things. It's not typical, but it will help you to stand out.
How would you recommend, new grads and students prepare that document? Because you don't want to come across as saying that their practice is doing something wrong or that they, really stink in this area. How do you make those recommendations and still maintain that respect and professionalism for the job that you're looking for?
I think it's a fewfold. I think ultimately if a doc or a hiring manager is going to take offense to that, why would you ever want to join that job? If it's about egos and it's about me and you and not about the ultimate goal of the practice, great. If that gets uncovered and they see it as like, oh, so you don't think I know what I'm doing? Okay, good. I'm glad we found that out today. But if they're like, wow, this is excellent. You have ownership. You have this sense of ownership here. But you're right. There is a way to approach it. And I would make sure to add that caveat. Don't just email it to them and say, figure it out. Sit down with them and say, I prepared this because you've done such an amazing job at building this practice, and here are some ideas. There is so much I don't know about how you're running your practice and your numbers, and this is just some ideas to show you that I'm already thinking of ways that we can grow. And so it's all about framing it, looking them in the eyes and letting them know that piece of information.
Yeah, I think when you envelope it in with, and this is how I'm going to fix that for you,
Right.
comes across much differently. If you bring it to the table of, you have such an incredible practice, I want to be a part of it, here's an area that I see we could grow together. It's pointing out a weakness without making them feel weak.
Correct, yeah. Now, when creating a resume, I think my tip is Google Docs. I like Google Docs. You could access it from anywhere. I've done resumes that were in Adobe Illustrator. They were fancy with colors and gradients, and anytime I needed to update it, it was the biggest headache. Resume needs to be agile, so don't go crazy with formatting. Make it clean and easy. I hate seeing resumes in our system that the bulleting is weird and the spacing is awkward. Just keep it simple and get the point across. Very pleasing on the eyes. Padding. Don't try to squeeze everything into the margins. What are your guys' tips on don'ts? What don'ts or things you should not do when building your resume?
I think number one is absolutely what you said. If it doesn't look clean, don't send it. And there really isn't any reason to fluff it with designs and things like that, because what's in it should speak for itself. It's not about what pretty design you picked or what color scheme you picked. It's about what you actually have in there, and they're not going to hire you because you used a pretty floral font. I don't know. Second thing that's equally as important, please check your spelling. It sounds so simple, but I can't tell you how many resumes we would get come across the desk that probably were good candidates, but if they're not going to take the time and attention to detail in their resume and check the spelling on it or check the grammar or, that they've got the same thing in there twice, things like that, why would I hire them? Because they're probably not going to bring that attention to detail to the practice either.
Correct. It's a big one. File name, too.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I agree 100% on both of those. You have to remember your resume is your first chance to make an impression on your future employer. So having the correct grammar, proper spelling, making sure that formatting is nice and clean and it's easy to read, those are the most important things, hands down. That's really...
Contact information, accurate contact information, and a voicemail set up when you do call that number. I can't tell you how many times we would get a great resume and go to call them, and it's fine if they, if they don't answer, I get it. It's a number they didn't know, right? But they didn't have a voicemail, and you just sort of stop there. When you're an employer, I'm not going to sit there and call them 5 times until they finally answer the phone. I'm just not.
No, I agree. I've gone into that so many times I honestly can't count. And the voicemail full thing, I've heard that recording 5 million times in my life, calling candidates. And if you want somebody to call you back, we have to be able to leave you a message. We have to be able to contact you. That is the most important information. And I know you guys go from your college emails to your most people Gmail or whatever you use as your personal email. Put both on there, put one on there. There's just got to be a way for us to get a hold of you.
Go ahead.
Good. I think it's perfectly fine to say preferred method of contact and have multiple on there, but that way your employer or to-be knows, okay, maybe they're quicker on email or it's easier to call them. And like you said, a lot of times, and I did it too, I started with my university email when I was in college and started building things, and then those got deactivated or I moved on to a different one, and then it's trying to change everything. It's a good idea to create an email, whether it's Gmail or whatever, that you can have for an extended period of time, because you can always adapt that later, but at least that's not going to be deactivated in 5 years, or you're going to get locked out, or whatever the situation may be.
When actually forming the content of the resume, I think that's one of the most difficult parts, right? You get, the headlines is your job, where it was, how long you stayed. Those things are a bit easier. It's what bullets do I put in? What do I leave out? That I think is one of the most difficult things. Do you guys have any suggestions there on, what should those bullets be and how should they be worded? Should they take up 1 line, 2 lines, 3 lines? How do you keep it simple while getting the point across?
I always like to err on the side of caution. You don't want to leave anything out. So if it takes 2 bullets to put all the information down for your opportunity or everything that you've done for a certain position, then it takes 2 bullets. If it takes 10, it takes 10. I think there's obviously a cutoff. You don't want to have 50 bullets on a single position that you've had and all of the things that you did with that opportunity. I think that goes back to being able to tailor your resume for the opportunity and highlighting your experience in that opportunity that will reflect the position that you're applying for. So if you're going for an opportunity in an ocular disease, then you want to focus on everything that you did in your previous positions, rotations, school, everything that has to do with that.
Yeah, one thing I did when I was doing my rotations is I would basically bullet kind of the high points of what I covered in that rotation. So if I learned a specialty contact lens, I would put that in there. Or if I saw a ton of glaucoma in that rotation, I would put that in there so that the person looking at the resume would know, okay, she's had some experience in this. I may not be completely versed in it, but I at least have been introduced to it. Thoroughness is absolutely key. Don't leave stuff out. Don't short sell yourself, but be concise with what you're putting. We don't need a paragraph to explain that you did ocular disease. We just, keep it as short and sweet as you can, because they're probably going through multiple resumes. They don't have time to sit there and read a book. But if you can make it concise, to the point, you're much more likely to actually have your resume read fully.
I agree 100%. And I'll just give you an honest opinion from a recruiter is we spend less than 10 seconds looking at your resume, okay? I read your information, I'm going through it. I don't read it word for word. I'm going through looking for highlighted words. There are key words I'm looking for in your resume that says, I have experience with glaucoma. I have experience, in all these other different things. So that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, I think that shows how competitive it can be. I know that when we're looking at resumes, I'm not looking at optometrist resumes. for example, if we're hiring a marketer or someone like that, you just get a sense, it speaks to you. You get this feeling of if this person is right for the job. And so that's, it's not, each bullet does not stand alone. They all rest against each other and all mean a bigger picture. And so I think when you're sitting down to write that resume, you want to get across, what am I really trying to convey here? What's the one main point? And that one main point should be something that you bring into your interview, and it should be the one thing that you bring into your value in that practice. What is the worst resume you guys have seen? I saw one that was just so overdone, multiple pages, photographs, quotes, just thinking that it was going to push the person in the right direction, and ultimately, obviously, it made them look silly. What are some bad ones you've seen? Anything comical?
Gosh, I've looked at so many. I love when I get the ones that are like 2 lines. It's like their name and, that they worked at some fast food restaurant 10 years ago and they want to be a technician and have no reason why, Maybe a cover letter would have been good in that scenario, why you're wanting to do this now. I have no problem with starting ground up, but probably not going to convey that in 2 lines. Then there's the flip side of that where, like you said, it's 10 pages long, but nothing's spelled right. And I love the ones that you get where they've been somewhere for like 6 months and they've listed all these jobs, right? So they've got all this experience, but they were there for like 6 months at each one of them. I'm like, why would I hire you? You're going to be here for 6 months, if that, So, yeah, I don't know. They're all over the board. You could talk all day.
I've honestly viewed probably over 1 million resumes in my life, and the ones that always make me chuckle at least are the fast food person who thinks they can be an optometrist because they don't understand it, you have to be a doctor. So I always get a laugh out of that. I don't know. I just thought it was common knowledge you had to be a doctor to be an optometrist. But on top of that, the really short ones. Cameron Faylor, OD, phone number, email address, and that's it. And it's like, really? Some additional information would be great. The ones that are as long as books are just as bad. So you get those resumes that are completely overdone. They have their picture on the front of their resume, which is not necessary. Don't put your picture on your resume. Okay, don't do that. So there are just so many bad examples that there are a lot of really good examples out there.
What do employers really look for? I'll go at this one first, but what do employers expect to see or look for or highlight? I personally think it's around the talk about revenue and growth. So I think that most folks put out their resume and they feel that because they say they went to SUNY Optometry or whatever optometry school and they passed their MBEO and they know how to treat glaucoma and they know how to use an OCT, that somehow makes them stand out. But that's what every resume looks like. And so if I was an employer and you're applying to a private practice in particular, but I think all practices this is valid, I would talk about either a track record of this or your ability to drive growth, drive revenue, and how you're going to do that. If I see that resume and I'm a private practice doc and my practice is stuck at $950,000 a year, and for the last 3 years I've been trying to get it over $1 million, who do you think I'm going to hire? The person who's able to bring in the extra patients, the more advanced care that's going to boost that. And so every resume I look at does not contain that, and it's unfortunate. We're here preaching that all weekend. So if you're at the many talks we're doing on career workshops, you're going to hear me say that. And it's very easy to do so. It's very easy to talk about how you can drive revenue and growth. Just think about the value you bring. People pay for that. In the business sense, being an eye doctor is you're exchanging value for dollars, and that value, the value is an eye exam. So how, can you deliver that uniquely to help grow the practice?
Well, I think your resume is your starting point on that, and then you convey it more, once you get into the interview. But the cover letter is a good place to do that because especially when you're looking at an optometry job, right? We all have graduated from school. We've all passed our boards. Those are still things, of course, you're going to want to put on there. Your education history, the fact that you pass boards, maybe you want to put that on there, but probably not, just because you're not going to be able to practice if you didn't pass boards, right? Say you're getting licensed in multiple states, put that down. Any of your active license, if you've had a license in another state in the past, you can still put that down. Just make sure that it's noted inactive or whatever the case may be. First, start with that, right? Line everything out, get everything about you even if you feel like, okay, everybody else is putting that down too, go ahead and put it. And then anything that sets you apart, and then take your cover letter and let that be the place where you explain a little more, because that's okay to make, of course, paragraph form and a little more conversational. Your resume, you don't want to type a paragraph saying, I did ocular disease, but now I want to do this and this and this in your practice. That's a perfect place to put it on the cover letter. Introduce yourself. It'll give them a little more feel, and then they can grow on that when they take you in for the interview.
Yep. Cameron, any tips on that?
I agree 100%. It's the cover letter. This is your place to really go and tell them why you're the perfect candidate. I'll actually read a cover letter because you're telling me a story with that on why you're the perfect person for this position. What makes you stand out above everybody else?
Yeah.
Most doctors' resumes, they're very similar. So being able to stand out that way is a little more difficult than with your cover letter, because you're going to be able to convey why you can do these things, why you can increase growth, because let's face it, optometry is a business. It is.
Absolutely.
You're able to really kind of reach out to me and tell me why you're going to be that candidate above all the other positions, because depending on what position you are applying for, you could be one of 15 candidates, or you could be the only candidate. It really kind of just varies from location to location, job to job, and everything like that.
I think you should always approach it like you're one of 15, because you
should.
don't assume that just because, like Matt said, that you graduated from a school that's great, or you had a great professor, or you did, this or that it's going to make you stand apart. Assume that you're up against 15, 30 people and make yourself stand apart in that way.
Especially as a new grad, because you're one in almost, 1,800 graduating a year. So, you're competing with 1,800 other people for that other position. And that's the way that I would look at it, because I think you have to be competitive in the way that you approach these jobs.
Coming at anything like the underdog is absolutely the true competitor and the true winner's mentality. 1 of 15 for sure. Difference between a resume and a CV. Go ahead.
I think, to me, the biggest difference is a CV. You want to keep a little more succinct. Those are typically going to be 1 page or less. It's what really, really high points needs to be tailored for the practice that you're going into. Your resume, you really can get into, my full resume has everything from professional shows that I've been involved in, lectures that I've given, all that sort of thing on one. Articles that I've written, awards that I've gotten, achievements, all of that sort of thing on my full resume, and that grows. And like we used to have a surgeon involved in a practice that, he's about 70 now. His full resume was about 15 pages. He's not going to give that to everybody, right? His CV was where he put those high points, the things that you really needed to know about himself. And then if you needed the full resume, you were able to get that. So
isn't it the other way around? CV is the longer version.
Yeah,
resume
CV,
is short.
sorry,
CV is the longer
I did. I
version.
said
Yeah.
that
Flip
totally
that.
backwards. Flip that.
So, yeah.
Resume short, CV long.
So there's two things. There's a CV and there's a CV summary. Okay, what you're talking about is CV summary, which is similar to a resume. It's a kind of a condensed version of your work experience. Any kind of articles that you're very proud of that you wrote that was published, education, things like that. A CV is extremely long. The longest that I've ever seen was 45 pages. Very impressive man, guest lectured at all these different places, was published more times than I could count, and that's where you want to go and put everything that you've ever done in your career is in your CV. So, like I said, and that has no page number limit. I literally got one last week from an ophthalmologist that was 27 pages. And again, very impressive guy. That's where you can kind of go crazy. Anything that you're proud of, put it on there. If you did some kind of charity event, you want to put that on there, put it on there. So that's where you're going to put all of these different things. The CV summary is a little more succinct. It's your CV in 2 pages.
The high points.
So what's interesting is that the resume is a way to kind of document your track record.
Resume, I would think of that more as like Matt said, your track record, a little more like where you've been, what you've done employment-wise, or in a lot of times school-wise. CV summary can be a little bit longer than that. You're including a little bit more, but not the 45-page full-on CV. it's not as much different between a resume and a CV summary as a full CV.
They're very similar.
Yeah.
The only difference is in most resumes, you're not going to put any kind of published work.
Right.
You're not going to put any kind of additional education or anything like that. It's going to be more basic. With the CV summary, you can put some additional things about things that you were published in, and some other different charities and things like that.
A lot of times jobs are more centered around the resume, which is a little bit, like they said, quick and dirty. Professional speaking opportunities or other engagements or panel talks, they'll typically ask for a CV. They want to understand more about you and your background rather than just work history and general high-level skills. But, in our field, you can give them whatever you want, pretty much. A lot of times you'll find positions that want one way or the other, but overall you can kind of do what you feels represents you best.
Yeah,
I wouldn't have a problem.
I would look at your CV as something that you're consistently updating and building every single time that you lecture or you write or you do anything that's outside of your normal. Go ahead and add that into your CV. Like you said, make it as long as you want to make it, and then you can always shorten that down to read through that and say, okay, what are my high points? If I was making a highlight reel about myself, what are those? Make that into your CV summary, and then, like you said, even shorter for a resume, just more about the actual history and job.
I think ultimately you want to start with the CV and then you want a resume. I don't think you need the CV summary. It's just I've never needed it or seen it come up, but it exists. So the whole concept behind all this is trying to prove that you have a track record and you exist as a human and you've have done schooling and all that. Fundamentally, I think that speaks to what you're trying to get at. You're really trying to describe yourself differently here, and I think that's so important to keep in mind. How do you stand out more? How do you get to your essence? How do you word things and go about describing that? Are there certain things, maybe specific examples that you guys have that let someone shine, shows what they're all about, rather than just listing what everyone else is going to list?
It comes down to being true to yourself. So you don't want to come off as a fake person. If there's something that you're proud of, then put it on there. Even if I don't think it should be on there, put it on there. I have on my CV something or on my resume that I always put, and that's my charity. So I do a lot of work with the Autism Society of America. I have a son who's autistic, so that's something I put on there all the time because I'm proud of it. So be true to yourself in anything that you do with your resume. Obviously, you want to tailor it to be a good candidate, but if there's something that you're really proud of and you want everybody to know about, put it on there. And it'll show people that you're a real person and you're just not another, number in the machine. So that's the best thing that I could tell you, is really to be true to yourself and be proud of what you do and all of your accomplishments.
And that goes down to the way you word things too. Speak like yourself. Speak like they're going to hear you in the interview. And I think a strategy when creating a resume is really starting with the most possible and then parsing it back. And you'll see within a given sentence, if it's wrapping onto 2 lines, there's always a way to kind of parse it back, consolidate words, and get the point across faster, because to your point earlier, you're scanning it for 10 seconds. Now, you don't always scan it for 10 seconds, though, because once you find the one you like and you're actually starting to get engaged, now you're really going into it more detailed, right?
The best thing to do is to put that one thing in there that makes me stop and say, wow, I really have got to look at this further. This is really interesting. This person stands out above everybody else because of this reason. And that's going to vary from position to position and really person to person, because I'm not just looking at your work experience. I'm trying to find out what kind of person you are by reading you on paper.
Do you create your resume based on value in your mind? What I thought I did best, or most importantly, or chronologically, basically, right? I think the most standard is chronological, and that's sort of what, especially because if you're looking for a work history, that's where we're going first. How long were they at that last position? Where was it? What did they do? That sort of thing. So if you're looking at that kind of resume, chronological is really the easiest for your employer to once you get into more personal achievements, then I would say, list, if it's not so much a chronological thing, like in his case, of course, that the charity would want to be somewhere prominent, where that's because that speaks a lot to him. So it kind of depends on the part, but if it's something that's truly a dated thing, go ahead and keep it that way, because if you did something 15 years ago and you're putting it the very first thing and then the next thing was last year, sometimes it gets a little confusing.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Especially with your work experience, Chronological is great. If you have something that you're very proud of as far as any kind of charity work or anything like that, you can put that up there at the top, or you can put that down at the bottom. You know, I can literally scan a resume in 10 seconds and find those things, you know, that stick out. So I look at everything. I look at work experience. I look at education. I look at extracurricular activities that you do. You know, if you want to put down your interests down at the bottom, I love reading people's interests. And that's the best part for me, because you can learn about somebody reading their interests.
Yeah, you can definitely have that part. And I think having a very distinct section so that we're able to say work history, got it, interests, got it. And wherever you want to do that is fine, degree, you know, that sort of thing. But make sure that it's very clear cut and very easy for us to quickly look at. I mean, we had a position posted one time for a technician that was 450 resumes came in for it. We do not have time to go through 450 resumes in any kind of thorough, you know, look through. So if you put those things immediately, then when we go back and narrow it down to maybe 20, then we'll take a lot closer look.
People are hesitant to put things like interests and, you know, high-level skills and things like that. On my resume, I always had a little section that had like probably 10 or 15 keywords that I knew would help me to stand out big time. So, you know, knowledgeable with Facebook ads, well, just say Facebook ads, Google AdWords, other advertising platforms and systems out there, and just keywords that would help me to stand out in a big, big way. I think you can highlight those because employers' eyes will jump there and say, what is this thing? I'm not used to seeing this. And then I wouldn't blend your hobbies and interests into that, but for me it was kind of these skills that don't really fit in other places, but it was like a skill level list. But it was not skills that many other people have or that are expected to be seen. So
just make sure what you put down you actually do.
Yep.
There's nothing
Say you
worse.
speak Italian and you don't.
Yeah, than bringing somebody in for an interview or hiring somebody, even worse, and getting them in and finding out that what they told you they did was not real.
So one thing that we did to help people get an overview of how their resume was doing, the current one that they have, we literally just launched this last night, and we haven't even begun to truly test it yet. It's called Resume Robot. So it's resumerobot.covalentcareers.com. So what we did was we coded up a intelligent resume advice for optometrists. It used a little bit of artificial intelligence to parse a resume, scan it, and then ultimately provide optometrist-driven feedback based on the resume. It's obviously free, right? You can get engaged with it immediately. So I'm going to upload a resume, this fake resume, and we'll go through this together. So the resume scored a 58. So it looks like they were missing important contact information, city, state, zip, phone number, email address. So something was missing there. This goes over the file name. So the file name is a really interesting part of the resume, right? People name their resume all sorts of things. Draft 1 for XYZ. The length of the file name is also important. So this is giving tips on the length of the work history and the details in the work history. So if you read this feedback, though, this is feedback that we got from optometrists across the country who we felt were excellent when it came to previewing resumes and then contextually put it in here. It also goes over education history. This person didn't include their GPA in the resume. This person used a lot of resume cliches, so we coded in a lot of overused words like team player, detail-oriented, hard worker, things like that. So it's not using language around measurable achievements like improved, increased, decreased, $, percentage, these key indicators that indicate specific skills and your ability to bring success and growth to the table. This is now getting much more into optometry experience. This resume didn't talk about co-management, EHRs, any equipment, or any type of NBEO exam or things like that. So this is just phase one of this product, but as this grows and as it expands, we're going to be adding a lot of iterations to it to make it better. Everything we put out for job seekers is always free and always will be. Do you guys have a resume currently? Let's talk about yours. So,
Yeah.
And where are you at right now? Are you still a student?
Yeah, I'm
Okay,
still a
cool.
student.
And what year are you in?
First year.
Okay, so this is interesting. The student
Yeah.
resume is, I honestly think, very different than obviously
much.
new graduate resume. And for you, it's going to be starting with a real blank canvas in a way, a real unique way that you can make yourself stand out from scratch. But this tool is going to also look at things like, are you a part of different clubs and things like that. So
Right.
when you upload it, you'll actually see what you're missing of course you're missing it. You're only in your
Right.
first year right now, but it'll also give you an idea of what to start going after in terms of your achievements and things like that.
Yeah, I think that speaks to a point that I was going to make earlier, and then we got off on another really good point. But when you're in school, always be thinking about your resume. Tailor your experience in school to be able to create that resume that's going to make you stand apart. And that doesn't mean you have to join every single club. You know, Matt did a lot in learning how to do Facebook ads and all of that sort of thing that he kind of enjoys. That set him apart. You know, I liked a lot of leadership roles, so I did that, and that set me apart. Find what you like. Don't try to fit that cookie cutter or what you think needs to be on there.
Right.
But take your time in school to very intentionally build yourself and build your resume, and that way when you get out, you don't have to fight against the 1800 as much as you would have.
Go ahead.
Do you feel like since we don't have like so much optometry experience, like as first years, is your shadowing experience is important to put down?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
It's critical. Just make sure it's not
definitely.
a flash in the pan and that it's something that you kind of continually kept
Yeah.
up with. But, you know, so say like I shadowed, like most people would say, saw glaucoma patients, helped out with NCT and pre-testing. I would say that I had coffee with the doc and he told me how to run a P&L statement and what it meant to have a upside down balance sheet and how to bring the practice to profitability. Those things are what I put on a resume. That will stand out big time. It's like, oh, this person has business interest. We're in a world of business as private practitioners. So even if that becomes the standard, talking about profit and loss statements becomes the standard, move to something else people aren't talking about. The whole point is you have to stand out. Don't talk about what everyone's talking about on resume.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say the same for like if you have a technician job or something like that on the side. A lot of people do that before school. When you're in school, that's a perfect time to use that into your resume, and maybe that phases out later once you're out and have other positions.
Right.
In our audience here, how many of you think you know how to take a decent photograph? Okay, we got two people.
Mostly girls, so they
Do you
probably
have a camera other than your iPhone? This one thing alone is talking about your experience with amateur photography. Both practices I went to, you know, when you went to their Google Maps thing on your phone, it was just like the icon with the person in gray, you know, or like there was nothing there. And, you know, I knew how to operate a digital SLR camera. Wasn't, you know, the best at it. But, you know, when I had downtime between patients, I went and took photos of what the front of the practice looked like and made sure it looked good and contributed those things. And so I don't think it's off base, especially if you're applying to a job and you know they have none of that. Load up your resume on things like that. Yes, you know how to see glaucoma patients, but I think that camera skill is far more important. Seriously.
just think outside the box is kind
Think
of
outside the box.
the main
Or hire
point.
Jared. He's very good. Yep. Expensive. Any other tips you guys have? I think resumes is an interesting topic because everyone kind of has one already. It's, you know, you can look at a lot of different blog articles on it and templates. You could use Resume Robot now. So I think there's some obvious things about the resume. There's some non-obvious things about the resume. My number one tip, I don't know what your guys is, it's outside the box thinking. Make sure that your resume looks different than the folks in your class and the people in your neighborhood who are going to be applying to those jobs. Stand out in some unique way so that when that 10-second scan happens, you look, you know, like you're the winner of the bunch.
I like details, so make sure that you know, like we covered, that you've read it, you've proofread it, you've had your friends proofread it, you did your Resume Robot. Make sure that it's something you're proud of, because it really is that first impression of you. And if you don't, and make it true to you, you know, like we said, make sure that you're really, the things you're putting on there are things that if I said, tell me about that you could talk about for, you know, however long you want to talk about it, because it's something that you're passionate about. That attention to detail, as simple as it sounds, is one of the most overlooked things, because people either get kind of lackadaisical with it, or they do it too quickly, or they think that it's so simple that they can just throw it on paper and it's done, and they didn't put a lot of thought into it. So yeah, take your time, make it intentional, and make it precise.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Stand out, number one. You want to stand out from everybody else. Number two, be true to yourself. You don't want to put fake things up there. You want to show your hopefully future employer who you are in these pages. And the last thing, don't be afraid to change your resume for every single job that you apply to. Tailor your resume for the position that you're applying for. Those are the big things I would say.
make sure that file name is for the right employer too.
Yes, absolutely.
Make sure your cover letter is for the right
Yep.
employer.
Yep.
I was looking through a resume the other day, and there was emails attached to it. There was emails, like PDF emails within this resume that was in the file. And I think that people forget, double check
Yeah.
what you exported
Yeah.
into a PDF.
Yeah, I
And
have
don't
a
be
file
afraid to
that
have
is
people look it over.
and it's in one place, and it's saved in a very obvious place, so nothing else gets saved into that. And it's very intentional that way. And you can put, you can have a file on your whatever computer or laptop that's your resume, your CV, and maybe your headshot if they request it. Like you said, don't just send it. We'll know what you look like eventually. But some places may actually need it or need it for something later, whether it's the website or whatever that may be. So it's always good to have a professional headshot. The other thing, we spoke on references really briefly. If you do include them, please make sure that they are the type of people that you want to represent you, and that it's not your mom or your sister or your boyfriend, because that it's just, it doesn't go too well when you're the employer calling and you get mom.
Yeah, and 100% you guys should have a LinkedIn profile. That's where they're going to find your picture. It can reflect similarly to your resume. It's a great place to put published works if you're writing for new grad optometry. Great place to include URLs and things like that. And in 2018, not having a CovalentCareers.com profile as both an optometry student, new graduate, or even experienced OD, I think you're missing out. There's a lot of great conversations happening on the platform, and every day people are finding jobs. So absolutely get on there. If we can be a resource in any way, reach out to us. Matt at CovalentCareers.com, Patricia at CovalentCareers.com, Cameron at CovalentCareers.com. And there are so many cool things we're putting out this year. And as a career development company, we are here 100% for you guys to have a very happy career. So if we could be a resource, let us know. But thank you guys. Any other? Cool.
Good luck, everybody.
Good luck, everyone.
Good
Thanks.
luck.